boyfriend, Aaron Wright, felt like she would not submit to him as his girlfriend, and because of that, he wanted to teach her a lesson.
She called my phone, and she said that she can't take no more. She said that she was trying to leave him.
Well, Jessica, we just heard from Captain James Clark. They're calling this brutal and barbaric. But part of what makes this also so disturbing is that the two suspects are Temple police officers. The boyfriend had apparently resigned from the police force 2 years ago for reasons that are still unclear. The other accomplice, apparently still a Temple police officer. That was, of course, until he was arrested and charged over the weekend.
The boyfriend had stripped her of her clothes, handcuffed her to a weight bench, and used some type of baton to beat her throughout her entire body. The friend was actually helping position the female and turn her and contort her body into certain positions so the boyfriend could beat her in those areas of her body.
You're lying face down on a bench in your own kitchen. Not resting. Restrained. For other people are in that house right now, 2 of them children, and not one of them can help you. The 2 men standing over you both know exactly what handcuffs are for. They used to carry them for a living. That's what happened to 24-year-old Joyce Quaweay. She wasn't attacked by a stranger in the dark. She was killed inside her own home, by her boyfriend and his best friend, 2 Temple University police officers, while her own baby girl slept just down the hall. So what actually happened inside that house? And how did 2 men sworn to protect the public end up charged with taking a life inside their own home? That's where this story starts. The name of this channel is Crime Scene Hive, and before we go further, I want to be upfront. This case involves details some viewers may find disturbing. If you're new here, subscribe and let us know in the comments where you're watching from. Like this video, share it, and drop a comment. It helps this story reach the people who need to hear it. Joyce Quaweay was born in Providence, Rhode Island. Her mother, Jackie Wee, had immigrated to the United States from Liberia, building a new life for her children in America. At 15 years old, Joyce left Providence and moved to Philadelphia to live with her aunt. It was there that she grew up, and it was there that she eventually started a family of her own. By 2016, Joyce was working at Spin Incorporated, a Northeast Philadelphia organization that provides support services for people with autism and intellectual disabilities. Those who knew her say the job fit who she was. Karen Nettles Davis, a close friend who had known Joyce since their days together at West Philadelphia High School, later described her as ambitious and independent, the kind of person who took care of the people around her. The man Joyce was in a relationship with was Aaron Wright. Wright had joined the Temple University police force in 1989. In 2012, he left that job. For years, the exact circumstances stayed unclear, but a former Temple Police Union representative, Zulma Rosario, later stated that Wright had actually been forced to resign. Temple University has never publicly confirmed the reason behind his departure. Wright's closest friend was Marquis Robinson. Unlike Wright, Robinson was still an active-duty Temple University police officer in 2016. He had joined the force in 2006, and by every account, he and Wright were more than co-workers. They were the kind of friends who shared a home. That home was a rented house on the 4600 block of Green Street in the Germantown section of Philadelphia. Inside lived Aaron Wright, Joyce Quaweay, Marquis Robinson, and Robinson's girlfriend. Joyce and Wright had 2 young daughters together, a 2-year-old and a 10-month-old, who lived there full-time. Wright also had 2 older daughters from a previous relationship, then around 8 and 10 years old, who stayed at the house on nights their mother worked. From the outside, none of this looked unusual. It looked like a full household, built around 2 working men and their families. Neighbors saw nothing alarming. Joyce's own sister and friends who spent time around Aaron Wright never saw a warning sign, never heard a raised voice, never noticed a bruise. That's the part of this case investigators would later come back to again and again. Behind that front door, something had been happening for a long time, and almost no one on the outside knew it. If stories like this matter to you, stories that look at how control can hide in plain sight, subscribing helps this channel keep bringing these cases the attention they deserve. Prosecutors would later say that inside the house on Green Street, there was a pattern. Both Aaron Wright and Marquis Robinson regularly punished the women and children in that home for what they called not following the rules. This wasn't isolated to one bad night. It was consistent enough that everyone living there understood exactly what would happen if a rule was broken. One example came out later in court, through the testimony of Wright's own daughter. She described being ordered to a weight bench and punished after clearing her father's plate from the table but leaving the napkin in the sink instead of throwing it in the trash. The infraction itself was minor. The response to it was not treated as minor at all. That weight bench sat in the kitchen of the house, and according to testimony, it became a recurring fixture in how discipline was carried out in that home. It wasn't just furniture. It was a known point of punishment, something the children in the house had already been exposed to before July of 2016. And this wasn't limited to the children. Robinson's girlfriend, who also lived in the house, was subjected to the same pattern of punishment. So this wasn't a story about one man controlling one woman. It was a household-wide system, enforced by two men, applied to every woman and child living under that roof. Joyce, by every account from people who knew her, was independent and capable. But independence does not protect anyone from coercive control, and there are signs that Joyce had recognized what was happening and was trying to get out. According to a cousin she had spoken to, Joyce had said she couldn't take it anymore and that she was trying to leave the relationship.
She called my phone and she said that she can't take no more. She said that she was trying to leave him.
That detail matters, because in cases involving domestic abuse, the period when a victim is actively trying to leave is statistically the most dangerous point in the entire relationship. Risk doesn't decrease when someone tries to walk away. It escalates. Joyce's mother, Jackie Wee, had no idea any of this was happening. About 2 weeks before her daughter's death, she visited Joyce and Wright at the house in Philadelphia. She spent a few hours there. She saw nothing that alarmed her. She would later say that during that visit, Wright didn't tell her anything, and nothing about the house gave her any indication that her daughter was in danger. That's what makes this case difficult for outsiders to process. The people closest to Joyce, including her own mother, walked through that house and saw a normal family. The system of control operating behind that door was invisible to nearly everyone who wasn't already trapped inside it. Friday, July 29, 2016, started like any other morning in the house on Green Street. Upstairs, Wright's 10-year-old daughter woke up to the sound of screaming coming from downstairs. Rather than react to it, she got up and went to the kitchen to prepare breakfast, cereal, milk, bowls, for the younger children in the house. In that home, the daily routine continued no matter what else was happening a few feet away. What was happening in the kitchen that morning was an assault on Joyce Quaweay. According to testimony and police reports, Joyce had been restrained on the weight bench, the same piece of equipment previously used as a site of punishment in that house. Aaron Wright used a police baton on her. Marquis Robinson's role, according to investigators and later trial testimony, was to reposition her body so that Wright could strike different areas. At points during the assault, Joyce told the men she couldn't breathe. According to testimony, Wright responded by pouring water on her face from a bottle. This detail is significant not because it was violent in itself, but because it shows that both men were aware Joyce was in physical distress and continued regardless. The assault did not stop quickly. According to prosecutors, Wright and Robinson kept going even after Joyce stopped responding. This detail would later become its own separate criminal charge, abuse of a corpse, filed against both men. At around 10:40 that morning, Robinson's girlfriend, who also lived in the house, walked in on what was happening in the kitchen. She was the one who called 911. She had, by her own account and the accounts of others in the household, experienced the same pattern of punishment inside that house. That morning, she made the call that ended it. Philadelphia police and paramedics arrived quickly. Medics began CPR on Joyce in the kitchen. She would later be pronounced dead at the scene. The city's deputy chief medical examiner, Dr. Albert Chu, would go on to determine that Joyce died of sudden cardiac death due to physical assault, a finding that would become central to the case months later. As officers moved through the house, they found Aaron Wright sitting on the staircase leading to the second floor. He wasn't attempting to leave. He wasn't attempting to explain himself to neighbors or claim ignorance. When officers approached him, he stood and told them, "I'm the one you want." He was taken into custody at the scene. According to police, he also admitted to detectives that he had beaten Joyce until she collapsed. Marquis Robinson made a different decision. By the time officers secured the house, he was already gone. He had left before police arrived, despite being a sworn officer with an active badge. It didn't take investigators long to locate him. He was arrested shortly afterward and taken into custody. Joyce Quaweay was 24 years old. What happened next moved this case from a single tragic morning into a much larger investigation, one that would eventually expose exactly how long this pattern had been going on inside that house, and who else had been living through it. If you want to see exactly how investigators built this case piece by piece, from a single 911 call to 2 separate criminal prosecutions, subscribe now so you don't miss the next chapter of how this case unfolded. Once Wright's admission was on record, Philadelphia police homicide moved quickly to formalize the case. Investigators built out charges based on the assault itself, the events afterward, and what detectives were learning from the other people who had been living inside that house. Aaron Wright was charged with murder, aggravated assault, unlawful restraint, conspiracy to commit murder, and abuse of a corpse. Marquis Robinson was charged with conspiracy to commit murder, aggravated assault, and abuse of a corpse. These charges reflected not just what happened to Joyce that morning, but the fact that the assault continued after she stopped responding. As detectives continued interviewing the people who lived in that house, a second criminal case emerged, separate from Joyce's death. This one centered on the assault of Wright's 10-year-old daughter, the same child who had been ordered to the weight bench over the napkin left in the sink. Both Wright and Robinson were charged with aggravated assault in connection with that incident as well. This meant the two men were now facing 2 separate prosecutions tied to the same house, one for a homicide, and one for the abuse of a child. Philadelphia homicide captain James Clark spoke publicly about what detectives believed was driving the violence. He described Wright as extremely controlling, and said that the assault on Joyce stemmed from Wright's belief that she was not being submissive enough. It wasn't jealousy, and it wasn't financial. According to the department's own account, this was about control, and about Joyce refusing to give it up.
The boyfriend, Aaron Wright, felt like she would not submit to him as his girlfriend, and because of that, he wanted to teach her a lesson.
That lesson apparently carried out in this Germantown home on the 4600 block of Green Street. The victim, Joyce Quaweay, was the girlfriend of Wright and mother of 2 of his children.
The boyfriend had stripped her of her clothes, handcuffed her to a weight bench, and used some type of baton to beat her throughout her entire body. The friend was actually helping position the female and turn her and contort her body into certain positions so the boyfriend could beat her in those areas of her body.
Temple University responded quickly on its end. Marquis Robinson, still an active officer at the time of his arrest, was fired from the department as soon as the charges were filed. Aaron Wright had already been gone from the force since 2012, and the university continued to decline any explanation for why he'd left. A university spokesperson released a statement calling Joyce's death a tragic event, and confirmed that Temple was fully cooperating with the Philadelphia Police Department's investigation. News of the arrest spread quickly through Philadelphia, in part because of who the 2 men were. 2 people connected to a university police department, one of them still actively on duty, now facing homicide and child abuse charges tied to the same house. In Providence, Rhode Island, Joyce's mother, Jackie Wee, received the news of her daughter's death. This was the same woman who had left Liberia years earlier to build a better life for her children in the United States, and who had visited that house in Philadelphia only weeks before, seeing nothing that suggested her daughter was in danger. Now she was receiving a phone call no parent is prepared for, learning that the daughter she'd raised was gone, and that the man she'd once sat across from in that home was the one being charged with killing her. The case was no longer just a homicide investigation. It had become something the city of Philadelphia, and the university both men had once served, would need to answer for. Nearly 2 years after Joyce Quaweay's death, in the spring of 2018, Aaron Wright and Marquis Robinson finally stood trial. Both men chose to waive a jury. Instead, their case would be decided by one person, Philadelphia Common Pleas Court Judge Diana Onholt, in a bench trial that would stretch across several days. The defense built its entire case around a single argument. Joyce, they said, had not been murdered. Her death was the result of cardiac failure, a medical event that happened to occur during a physical confrontation, but not one directly caused by the beating itself. If the defense could convince the judge that the heart failure was independent of the assault, the murder charge itself could fall apart. The prosecution, led by Assistant District Attorney Chesley Lightsey, built its case around the opposite conclusion. Yes, Joyce's heart had failed. But the reason it failed mattered. Lightsey's argument rested on the finding from the city's deputy chief medical examiner, Dr. Albert Chu, who had ruled Joyce's death a sudden cardiac death due to physical assault. In other words, her heart didn't fail on its own. It failed under the direct physical strain of what had been done to her body over an extended period of time. The medical finding didn't separate the assault from the death. It connected them directly. The most important moment of the trial came from a witness who wasn't an investigator, a doctor, or a police officer. It came from a 12-year-old girl. She was Aaron Wright's own daughter, the same child who had been 10 years old on the morning Joyce died, and who had once been punished at that same weight bench for leaving a napkin in the sink instead of the trash. Now she sat in a Philadelphia courtroom, facing her father and the man who had lived in her home like family, and testified for roughly 2 hours. She appeared composed throughout her testimony, speaking in a steady, level voice as she answered questions from the prosecution. She described the morning of July 29th, waking up to the sound of screaming, and going to the kitchen to prepare breakfast for the younger children in the house, the same routine she'd followed many mornings before. She described what she saw happening to Joyce that morning, and she described her own experience living in that house, including having been punished and restrained by both men on previous occasions. She also testified that she had seen Robinson's girlfriend go through the same treatment. Her account was not the only piece of evidence, but it was the piece that tied the entire case together, connecting the pattern of household punishment to the events of that specific morning. During closing arguments, Lightsey brought a police baton into the courtroom as a physical exhibit. She held it above her head in front of the judge, demonstrating the motion investigators said had been used against Joyce, and she gave the house on Green Street a description that would follow this case from that point forward, calling it a degrading, diabolical torture chamber. Judge Onholt did not take long to reach her decision. She found both Aaron Wright and Marquis Robinson guilty on every charge connected to Joyce's death, including third-degree murder, conspiracy, and aggravated assault. Both men were also convicted in the second case, tied to the assault of Wright's daughter, the same child whose testimony had just helped convict them. Two men who had once carried badges, trained to investigate violence and protect the people around them, were now convicted of committing it, in their own home, against the people who trusted them the most. Sentencing would come just weeks later, and it would bring both men face to face with the one person in that courtroom who had no professional role in this case at all, just a mother, asking the only question that mattered to her. If you want to see how this case ended, and what happened to both men in the years since their convictions, subscribe now so you're here for the final chapter. In July of 2018, Aaron Wright and Marquis Robinson returned to court for sentencing. In the room was Jackie Wee, Joyce's mother, who had traveled from Providence, Rhode Island to face the man who had killed her daughter. She gave her victim impact statement directly to Wright, asking him how he could make her daughter suffer the way he did. According to those present, Wright put his head down and said nothing in response. Judge Diana Onholt then handed down the sentences. Aaron Wright was sentenced to 60.5 to 141 years in state prison. Marquis Robinson received 55 to 130 years. Both men's defense attorneys, James Berardinelli for Wright and Gary Server for Robinson, had argued for leniency, pointing to their clients' expressed remorse and the fact that neither man had a prior criminal record. The court rejected those arguments and imposed the maximum sentencing range available. Wright was 49 years old at sentencing. Robinson was 43. Both sentences effectively guarantee that neither man will ever be released. Both men pursued appeals in the years that followed. Wright's appeal was rejected by the Pennsylvania Superior Court in 2020, and the Pennsylvania Supreme Court subsequently declined to hear his case further. Robinson's appeal was rejected in 2021, with the court finding no basis to overturn his conviction or sentence. As of the most recent public court records, both convictions and sentences stand, and neither man has any further appeals pending. Temple University has never publicly explained the circumstances behind Aaron Wright's departure from its police force in 2012, years before Joyce's death. That question remains unanswered on the record to this day. Jackie Quaweay said afterward that she believed justice had been served. She had crossed an ocean from Liberia years earlier so her children could have a better life in America. She never could have imagined that life would end with her standing in a Philadelphia courtroom, asking her daughter's killer how he could have done what he did. Joyce's friend, Karen Nettles Davis, remembered her as ambitious and independent, someone who took care of the people around her. That is the version of Joyce the people who loved her choose to hold on to, not the one defined by what happened inside that house on Green Street. This case still raises the same uncomfortable truth that runs through so many of these stories. The people closest to Joyce, her sister, her friends, even her own mother, never saw what was happening behind that door. Control like this doesn't always look like danger from the outside. Sometimes it looks like an ordinary home. Say her name. Joyce Quaweay. The truth about what happened to her is now part of the public record, and it will stay there.